Good morning. This March 3rd, 2021 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order in interest of promoting health and safety as we continue to deal with COVID-19 pandemic. The Board of Estimates continues to meet virtually. At this time, I would ask Comptroller Henry for any corrections, additions, and noted abstentions for today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 60, we need to make a correction to the item for the Department of Transportation. The subheader currently reads Developers Agreement number 1571. That needs to be deleted, and we insert Toll Installation and Maintenance Agreement. We have received a timely protest for pages 24 through 25, item number 2, Bureau of Procurement, B50002251, citywide towing services. The following items are being deferred on pages 24 to 25, item number 2, Bureau of Purchases, 50002251, citywide towing services. And on page 25, item number 3, Bureau of Purchases, I'm sorry, I keep saying Bureau of Purchases, it's Bureau of Procurement. B50006166, towing services for cars, trucks, and heavy equipment. The following items are moved to the non-routine agenda. Page 21, item number 5, Bureau of Procurement, B50005160, international trucks. On page 24, item number 1, Bureau of Procurement, B50006052, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity roofing services. Page 33, item number 10, Personnel Department of Finance, creation of new position. Page 45, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, First Amendment to Agreement with Community Mediation Program Incorporated. Page 46, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, First Amendment to Agreement with Living Classrooms Foundation Incorporated. Page 47, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, First Amendment to Agreement with Sinai Hospital of Baltimore Incorporated. Page 48, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, First Amendment to Agreement with Youth Advocate Programs Incorporated. Page 49, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, First Amendment to Agreement with Associated Catholic Charities Incorporated. Page 50, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, First Amendment to Agreement with Bon Secours of Maryland Foundation Incorporated. Page 61, Department of Transportation, Amendment number 2 to Agreement for Project number 1257, On-Call Conduit Infrastructure Design Services with Wallace Montgomery and Associates, LLP. Pages 67 and 68, item number 7, extra work order number 1, contract WC 1339, Upton Neighborhood and Vicinity Water Main Rehabilitation. Page 68, item number 8, extra work order number 2, WC 1339, Upton Neighborhood and Vicinity Water Main Rehabilitation. Item number 9, also on page 68, transfer of funds. Page 75, Department of Public Works membership dues. Pages 89 through 91, items number 1 through number 8, the Health Department agreements. And pages 103 to 106, items number 1 through number 8, Department of Housing and Community Development agreements. The following item is being moved back to the routine agenda. That is pages 19 through 20. Item number 3, Bureau of Procurement, B50005566, Services for Electronic Security Systems. The Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott has the following abstentions on pages 90 to 91, items number 6, 7, and 8, under Health Department agreements with the Johns Hopkins University. The Honorable President Nick Mosby has the following abstentions on pages 110 through 111, item number 1, Office of the State's Attorney for Baltimore City, retroactive travel approval and reimbursement. And on pages 11 to 12, item number 2, Office of the State's Attorney for Baltimore City, retroactive travel approval reimbursement. There are no abstentions for myself, City Solicitor James Shea, or Director of DPW Matthew Garbark. That is it for changes and corrections.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. I now direct the board's attention to the memorandum from my office dated March 1st, 2021, identifying matters to be considered routine agenda items and corrections. As noted by the Comptroller, at this point, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the items contained in the routine agenda.
It's Jim Shea, and I so move.
I second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor of approving the items of routine agenda, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The routine agenda is now adopted. Now on to the non-routine agenda. Beltway International LLC. The first item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 21 of the agenda. Item number 5, Beltway International LLC, extension of contract number B50005160. This relates to sourcing of parts for heavy equipment trucks, as well as vehicle service and warranty repairs. I requested that this item be placed on non-routine agenda because I noticed that there was no MBE, WBE procurement goals of this contract and wanted additional information from the city regarding the firms of outreach and what are we doing in the future. We have representatives from DGS available to answer questions from the board on this item. But I want to first recognize Chief Miller for Minority Women-Owned Business Opportunity Office to speak about this item and some of the outreach that's been done to identify and reach out to MBE, WBE businesses that might be able to bid for these types of contracts moving forward. Chief Miller, the floor is yours.
Good morning, members of the board, Council President Mosby, Mayor Scott, and Comptroller Henry. Just wanted to provide some background with the OEM contracts that are typically procured through the Department of General Services. Based on reviews that we've done in the past and just based on foreknowledge of these contracts, the services as well as the, products and equipment that are associated with it are basically original manufactured parts and services that are typically designed for specialized vehicles that are owned by the city, or variety of vehicles owned within the city's fleet. I believe that there in the past were attempts to see how they could goals, but because of how the make and models are associated with the vehicles and the parts and services that are required, requires the maintenance to only specialize in like original manufactured parts and services. So I think Department of General Services could probably speak more to the history of the maintenance side and the service side. But as far as the goals, there are not many businesses that specialize or are licensed or credentialed resellers of certain manufactured parts related to the OEM contracts.
Thank you, Chief Miller, for that explanation as well as the background research that you're able to provide regarding this particular item. At this point, I'm satisfied. I think it's important when we see contracts like this come up that do have minority women business enterprises away from the contract, that we provide the public with full transparency on, I guess, some of the back end work and the complexity associated with that particular contract. So at this point, if there are no additional questions or concerns from the board, I will be interested in entertaining a motion, or if we would like to hear from DGS, I'll leave it up to the members of the board. Not seeing any unreadiness or concerns at this point, I'll entertain a motion from the board to move this item.
Jim Shea, so move.
A second.
So this item has been moved and properly second. All those in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. We're on to the next agenda item. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 24, contract number B50006052, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity roofing services in the amount of $1 million. At this time, I'll turn the floor over to the Department of General Services, Division Chief Terrell Chesson. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Council President Mosby, Comptroller Henry, and Mayor Scott, and also the board. The contract that we're discussing, it is a contract for roofing repairs and maintenance in the amount of $1 million. That was based on a historical burn rate. We have a lot of work that we do through that contract throughout each season. We're at a point that we have to rebid, and the bidding was done through the standard open market process. I believe 45 days. Three vendors were, I think three vendors bid. Of those three, two were compliant and also within a reasonable price range. I believe the third vendor that was not included or sent for board approval was 52% above the pricing for the other two vendors. I think the question that you had was regarding MBU compliance, if not mistaken, and a couple other
Well,
items.
the biggest thing is just a complete MBU waiver, I believe, on this particular item.
Okay, and I will defer to Chief Miller, but I believe the process was done that way because a couple of the vendors, or at least one or two of the vendors, were minority or women-owned businesses. So I think that may have been the reason that it was waived. But I will defer to Chief Miller just to give more information or to cover items that you may have questions that I may not have answers for.
Thank you, Mr. Chesson. Chief Miller, are you still on with us?
Yes, I am, Council President. We actually did approve this waiver in accordance to Article 5, Subtitle 28-10, which states that MBU it is in a position to provide information and needed assistance to business enterprises covered by the subtitle to increase their ability to compete effectively for awards on city contracts. When we reviewed the waiver request from BOP, it was noted that it was a good opportunity that posed potential for MBE or WBE firms to competitively bid on the basis of serving as a prime if awarded. Actually, one of the potential candidates being recommended for award, which is Phoenix Contracting, is actually a certified WBE with our program. Oftentimes, we are required to identify opportunities for MBE and WBE firms to compete in the city's procurement opportunities as a way to balance the contract landscape. We also have identified that that is an area where there is lack, where we find minority and women-based firms serving and competing as primes on contracts. And so the actions that we demonstrated with this waiver, we feel were in accordance with the city code.
Thank you, Chief Miller. Again, just in full transparency, ensuring that we're scrutinizing kind of the role and the function of this body. That's why I wanted Chief Miller for you to kind of come in and explain that. When we see something like basic work associated with patching roofs, you know, we would, at the end of the day, ensure that we're doing everything possible to provide those opportunities to small Baltimore-based, local minority as well as women-owned businesses. And that's exactly what was done in this. What I'm hearing, Chief Miller, just to kind of dissect the specific point that you made, is this was an opportunity to potentially provide a WBE as a prime on this particular job. And that's why from a MBE, WBE goal perspective, it's going to far exceed what any goal would have been, while allowing a business that may have not had an opportunity to have a prime contract with the city of Baltimore to enact a prime contract. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir, that would be correct. We like to identify those opportunities, but again, we just saw this as a prime one because in the past it was awarded to MBE firms as primes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all the background information on that. At this point, are there any additional questions, concerns on readiness from the board for MBU or DGS? Hearing and seeing none, I'll ask, at this point, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move approval. Matt Garbark.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. At this point, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. We're moving on to the next agenda. That item is approved. The next item will be found on non-routine agenda today, can be found on pages 24 through 25, contract number B50002251, citywide towing services. This is a recommendation to terminate the city's agreement with Universal Towing LLC. A protest has been received on this item by Whitcomb and Selinsky, PC, on behalf of Universal Towing LLC. We will first hear from the Baltimore City Police Department, the Department of Transportation on this item, and then we'll hear from the makers of the protest. At this time, I will recognize Mr. James Corsley from the City Department.
I know I came back on late, but I thought that the comptroller deferred this item.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, he did decide to defer. If the administration would like not to kind of speak at this moment, that is fine, and wait for our next hearing. But the fact that we have the general public, people have taken time out of work to kind of come and to provide their side of the story or their concerns, I was providing them with the opportunity to do so. So we are deferring the vote, but we are allowing the public to kind of speak on this issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine by me. I just wanted to make sure because I think that if he deferred it, then technically it's not on the agenda, but our folks are here too, so we're fine. I'm fine with them speaking.
Okay, so Mr. Corley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Mosby. As you stated, we are here to recommend on behalf of the Bureau of Procurement that this contract related to police towing be terminated with respect to the Universal Towing LLC. Following a recent investigation by the Office of Inspector General and a contract review by the Law Department, it was determined that this vendor violated several key provisions of the contract. One, that all vehicles be towed to either the city tow yard or to a lot of the operator's choosing at the time of the tow, and that the vendor adhere to all federal, state, local, and administrative rules and regulations. The investigation conducted by the Regional Auto Theft Team and the Office of Inspector General found that on at least 3 occasions, there were vehicles towed to Mr. Stuckey's private lot. They failed to provide certified notice to the last registered owner of the vehicle as required by Maryland Transportation Code, and that when these vehicles were turned over to an auto parts dealer for scrapping, Universal failed to provide a fully completed affidavit of lawful possession, providing that they actually had the legal right to dispose of these vehicles. Further investigation in the course of this process has confirmed those details, and we stand by that recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Corley. At this point, is there anyone else from the administration or the police department that would like to speak at this time? It appears not. Are the folks from the Wilcom, Selinsky, or PC, or the owner or any representative of the owner on and would like to speak at this time? Again, this item has been asked by Comptroller Henry to be deferred, but I wanted to provide you an opportunity to speak because you showed up to speak to the public today.
Thank you, President Mosby and members of the board. This is William Selinsky. I don't know if you can see me.
We can't see you, Mr. Selinsky, but we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. In that case, I'll go ahead. This is the hearing that was scheduled for the appeal of the suspension. I just have a couple of things to say about it. I'm not going to repeat everything that was in the petition to modify or terminate the suspension, but I do want to call to the board's attention 3 things. First, there were 3 allegations that were made against Universal Towing. One, that Universal Towing failed to tow 3 vehicles to a city yard as directed. And keep in mind, this is about 3 vehicles, that's all. Number 2, that Universal Towing failed to properly send notice to the registered owner as required by the Maryland Transportation Code 25-204. And 3, that Universal Towing failed to submit complete affidavits of lawful possession for transfer to an automotive dismantler as required by Maryland Department of Transportation Motor Vehicle Admission Regulations. As to number one, the petition includes 7 instances where Universal Towing was told to either that the city yard was closed or that the accident vehicles were to be taken to the vendor's yard. The OIG report on which the suspension is based states that DOT Transportation towing chief stated that since the start of the pandemic, medallion tow companies were instructed to take accident vehicles to their respective yards. As I indicated earlier, this is about 3 vehicles. All 3 of those vehicles were accident vehicles. While it's alleged that the city yard was specified in some police reports as to where the vehicles were to be taken, that was not the practice. Universal Towing continued to be turned away from city yard whenever they showed up with a vehicle, unless the vehicle was specifically marked for continuing investigation by the Baltimore Police Department. Exhibit G to the petition indicates that city yard had a final say about what vehicles it would accept. And so that was the practice. Universal Towing tried to comply with the instructions that were given to them, but the final say on where vehicles were to be accepted was stated by city yard. And for these 3 vehicles, which were accident vehicles and not under investigation, they were taken to the vendor's yard. As to number 2, Universal Towing failed to send proper notice pursuant to MD Maryland Transportation 25204. That section requires a police department and not the towing company to send notice, and it doesn't require the towing company to do anything. These 3 vehicles, a Nissan Sentra, Nissan Armada, and a Toyota Corolla, were taken to the vendor's yard. Universal Towing has limited ability to search and does not include all states. So when they towed these vehicles, they couldn't find out who the owners were on 2 of the vehicles. The computer system identified Enterprise as the owner only of the Nissan Armada. The other vehicles came back as no record. There was no response from Enterprise after notice was sent to them for more than 30 days. The Sentra and Corolla were in the vendor's yard for more than 80 days. The dismantler has access to a larger database, and as it turned out, Enterprise was the owner of all 3 vehicles and retrieved them. Universal Towing did nothing got nothing more than the standard $300 fee for these. It never got paid for the towing and never got paid for storing the vehicles. As to number 3, and I know your time's valuable, so I'll try to make this quick. Failure to submit complete affidavits of lawful possession for transfer to an automotive dismantler. VR-454 is not required to be completed by the tow truck company operator as indicated in the OIG report. The bottom requires the auto dismantler fill in that information. That is the auto dismantler's sole information. Instructions at the top say complete the form in its entirety. It doesn't say who has to complete it. Universal Towing had left a standard form with the dismantler with all of its information. Because it couldn't get access to countrywide VIN numbers, the practice was for this dismantler to complete the form. And in fact, the form requires that it be kept for 3 years, presumably at the business of the dismantler. So the practice was for Marty's to complete. They had access to a better database. 2 of the vehicles came back with no record, and a notice was sent to the owner of the Armada. I only want to say that since the suspension, Universal Towing has lost about $65,000. It has had to lay off 6 of its 10 employees, including 1 with a new baby, and it's really already been punished enough. There's no other tow companies that were investigated this way who may have done exactly the same thing, and if that's the case, then they would assume that Universal Towing is being treated unfairly here. They didn't do anything illegal. They didn't break the contract. And all we ask is that our contract be restored. Thank you. If the board has any questions for the owner, Mr. Stuckey, he is available on this call also.
Thank you, Mr. Solinsky, and anyone else. At this point, I guess we'll entertain any questions or concerns from the board. As stated earlier, Comptroller Henry has asked at the beginning of this meeting to defer this item, so we will not take a vote today. However, just for the interest of general public business, we wanted to ensure that folks who decided to take time off work to come and communicate their concerns regarding this agenda item that was publicly disclosed prior had the opportunity to do so. So at this point, are there any questions or concerns for members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, unless there's any objections.
Mr. President, it looks like Mr. Corley was saying something, but he was on mute.
Sorry, Mr. Corley?
Yes, sir. If you'd allow, I'd like to address 3 specific things with relation to what Mr. Solinsky had provided.
Okay.
This investigation was not started on behalf of the city. The owner of the 3 vehicles in question, Enterprise Rental Car, had contacted the National Insurance Crime Bureau, who then, in their investigation, contacted the Baltimore Police Department, who investigated this matter. And the police department is who referred this to the OIG. There was no intent to target Mr. Stuckey's business, and we were only looking at this specific instance, which is why there is no allegation against another tow company, not because we were targeting one individual, but we were investigating a specific complaint by an outside person. Second, Mr. Solinsky asserted that all 3 of these vehicles were accident-related vehicles. One of the vehicles, a Toyota Corolla, was actually a recovered stolen vehicle. We have copies of the incident report, and it was actually part of an active criminal investigation. And the third is with regard to the assertion that Mr. Stuckey did not have the ability to run a nationwide database search. In the course of the investigation, Mr. Stuckey asserted to the OIG that he did in fact have the ability to run a database search on all VIN numbers nationwide, and that he attempted to do so but came back with no record. Those 3 facts are directly an opposite of the assertions made today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corley. I guess based off of what was just communicated, Mr. Solinsky, do you have any additional follow-up to those, to that rebuttal of your assertions?
Just these comments, Your Honor. All I would say is that he has a limited ability to search nationwide. He did that. And these vehicles came back no record. So there was nobody to notify for those 2. For the one vehicle that he did get an owner for, he sent a letter to, and they never responded. So that vehicle was the one that was in his yard for more than 80 days. He did the best he could, and he followed the procedure that was he had always followed. So I would just say that I don't see any evidence of wrongdoing, let alone a breach of the law or the contract.
Thank you, Mr. Solinsky. I believe that was a good, healthy kind of back and forth as it relates to, I guess, this side of the law department and the administration, as well as the representative for this private entity, Baltimore City-based company. So at this point, not seeing any unreadiness. I know that, again, the comptroller asked to defer this item. If there aren't any objections from the board, we will defer this item and move on to the next item. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to, I'm sorry, did I hear something?
I'm sorry, this was Mr. Solinsky. I just said thank you, President Mosby.
No problem. No, thank you, Mr. Solinsky, for joining us. If it's back on the agenda item, the next agenda or future agendas, the assumption is that you would continue to kind of monitor this. But just like we've provided you with the opportunity to speak today to the public regarding this particular issue with your client, we'll do the same in the future. But that's totally up to you. Of course, Mr. Solinsky, you guys do not have to come back, but if you would like to, again, the floor will be yours. Moving on to the next item, it's another towing service reject and rebid. The next item is non-routine agenda. Today can be found on pages 25, contract number B500006166, towing services for cars, trucks, heavy equipment. The recommendation is for the board to reject both bids received on this particular contract. so that this item might be reevaluated and rebid in the near future. The board received a late protest, and we will allow for the protester to speak today regarding Autobahn through their attorney, Mr. Charles Kirtlet of Rosenberg Martin Greenberg LLP. Prior to that protest, this item was already slated to be on the non-routine agenda item, so it fits right in line with the agenda that we already communicated. With that, we'll first hear from the Bureau of Procurement and the Department of General Services on this item, and then from Mr. Kirtlet regarding his client's assertion. Ms. Brown, are you available to speak on this item at this time?
Yes, good morning, President Scott. I apologize. President Mosby, Mayor Scott, and Comptroller Henry, and other members of the board. The Bureau of Procurement is asking that B5000-6166 towing services for cars, trucks, and heavy equipment for the Department of General Services, that the action is to reject all bids. And there was a corrective action that was requested as referred in the opening of Comptroller Henry, that unfortunately a template was mismanaged where someone submitted it and it was approved in this light in terms of upon review of the solicitation that the specifications would be reviewed. That is not correct. It was found by IMBU after their review that both of the bidders were found not to achieve the goals that were set. So therefore, it will be resubmitted in the next board hearing under those conditions versus the error that was submitted.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for providing that background information. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from the board for procurement? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Kirtlet, are you available to speak on behalf of your client?
I am. Thank you, President Mosby, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, City Solicitor, and members of the board. My name is Charles Kirtlet from Rosenberg Martin Greenberg. I represent the Auto Barn. Tom Showalter, the president of the Auto Barn, is also in the meeting today. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board, notwithstanding the deferral of the vote on this item. The Auto Barn has a special relationship with the city of Baltimore. It has been engaged with the city in its towing contracts for approximately 20 years. The Auto Barn is relied upon by the city to perform some of the most arduous, unusual, and extreme towing tasks that exist. These include midnight trips out of state to pick up city vehicles that are stranded, a request on a Sunday afternoon to tow a fireboat out of the Baltimore Inner Harbor, and the list goes on and on. I think that there would be no question that Auto Barn should be the winning bidder on this contract once again, but for the report that was issued by the Office of the Inspector General in September, and then a follow-up report that was issued in January of this year. In those reports, the Office of Inspector General makes essentially two allegations. And I believe that those two allegations are the reasons for the recommendation that the bid be rejected. And I appreciate the opportunity that the board the Bureau and the board will take to revisit those allegations in light of our protest. The first allegation concerns alleged overcharges in the amount of $120,000 over a period of 5 years between 2014 and 2019. Subsequent to the OIG's investigation, we have undertaken a line-by-line audit of every single charge submitted by the Auto Barn to the city during that period of time. Our audit has revealed that the Inspector General's conclusions contain numerous errors, including double counting in more than 50 instances, alleged overcharges, mistakenly counting charges that were allegedly erroneously billed under the contract when in fact they were legitimately billed under a separate contract. The OIG additionally failed to take into account circumstances where the Auto Barn undercharged the city. It would be impossible today to go through the line-by-line analysis, but that is a process that we are certainly eager to undertake with whether it's the Board of Procurement or the city solicitors of the law department or the OIG, but an opportunity to respond and work through those charges in detail. But at the end of the day, the Auto Barn is a responsible contracting party that has done tremendous service to the city and deserves to be able to continue in that role. The second allegation that was raised by the OIG is that the Auto Barn is out of compliance with its obligations for minority business enterprises and women-owned business enterprises, and that is simply not the case. The reason, I believe, for the allegation is that once the contract was terminated, but in its natural course, the Auto Barn lost the opportunity, the ability to be able to engage with the website interface to enter its data concerning its compliance with those requirements. As a result, the Auto Barn went out of its way to contact various members of city government to say, we're in compliance, here are the documents, we need to get these to you. We have all of those communications, they are outlined in the letter to the Inspector General, which we appended to our letter to the board today. Additionally, I would point out that everything that the Auto Barn has done has been in response to specific direct requests from the city. The gravamen of the allegations by the Inspector General is that services were performed that were out of contract. The city, in responding, the mayor's office, in responding to the Inspector General's report, noted that in order for the business of the city to get done and for the towing services to be performed that were necessary, the procurement process couldn't keep up with the pace of demand, and that the city engaged with the Auto Barn and made these specific requests for various work to be performed. The real problem here, in my view, is that the report from the Office of Inspector General precipitated a spate of coverage in the media that painted a grossly misleading picture. And the misleading picture was this, that the Auto Barn was conspiring with a city employee to somehow defraud the city. And that could not be further from the truth. The misleading picture needs to be closely examined because it will be immediately dispelled. And we have undertaken that work. So, and finally, every year, the Auto Barn puts up the Christmas tree in front of City Hall free of charge, which is a value of, I think, about $86,000 in services, if I hadn't already mentioned that. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to address the board. We're eager for the opportunity for the bid to be reconsidered and the relationship between the Auto Barn and the city to be re-examined. But the Auto Barn stands by 20 plus years of dedicated service to the city and is as a responsible Baltimore City-owned business. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions. And once again, Auto Barn President, Mr. Showalter, is on the line should there be any questions for him.
Thank you, Mr. Kirtland. Again, just like we extended the same courtesy to Universal before showing up today, we wanted to provide you with that same level of courtesy. Again, just for the record, the comptroller asked that this particular item be deferred to a later time. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board?
Mr. President,
Yes.
President Mosby, unfortunately, I'm just opportunity to respond or just.
So this is what we're going to do. Director Garbar, going to go to Ms. Brown in procurement to allow her the opportunity to respond. We're going to allow Ms. Kirtland to respond, and then you can ask your question, Mr. Garbar.
well, mine was just very clarifying. Are we still on item 2 or item 3?
We are on the item which is
Three.
which is B5006166, which is item 3, towing services, reject and rebid.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Brown, thank you so much for jumping in there before I moved on. If you could please provide any rebuttal or concerns you have regarding their assertions. Unfortunately, it appears that we have lost Ms. Brown. Is there anyone else from the administration who would like to speak on behalf of anything that Mr. Kirtland just communicated?
Yes, Mr. Council President. Stephen Potter on behalf of the Baltimore City Department of Law.
Yes, you can speak, Mr. Potter. I'm sorry, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Under this board's regulation, section 1G, paragraph 4.8, provides that the decision to reject all bids is final and not subject to protest. So the current posture, despite the matter being deferred, is that this protest is not properly before the board because it's simply a decision to reject all bids and to rebid the matter. And this regulation is consistent with longstanding Board of Estimates practice not to permit protest to recommendations to reject all bids. And the underlying reason for this is that no one has a vested property right to the award of the city contract. So there are other matters with regard to the contract itself and that need to be revised. For example, the matter is supposed to be changed from a request for bids to a request for proposals. And I think the purpose for this, not to disparage the auto barn, but simply to increase the number of potential bidders, which is in service to the city charter's goal of having competitive bidding. And we want to, I know that the agency wants to increase the number of bidders to have the best possible price for this particular work. And so that's the reason that the matter is to reject all bids. Certainly the auto barn will be able to bid on this revised request for proposals. And it's not in any way related to to any findings by the Office of Inspector General.
Thank you for that clarification from the law department. At this point, Ms. Brown did rejoin. Is there something that you would like to add to the discussion, Ms. Brown? I think Ms. Brown is still having technical issues. Again, this is an item that was deferred, as we just heard from the law department, based off of a reject or rebid opportunity. It will be the choosing, I assume, of the administration as well as the comptroller if it comes back on the routine in the future. Mr. Kirtland, thank you for providing your background on this. If you could please stay abreast of the Board of Estimates undertakings to determine if there's an opportunity for you to come back and communicate anything else. The floor will certainly be yours, like we provided you this morning.
Thank you, Mr. President. We appreciate it sincerely.
Thank you, Mr. Kirtland. Mr. Comptroller, you have something to say now? Again.
Well, I wanted to ask if we would want to reconsider encouraging them to come back if the law department is saying that there is no right to protest a rejection of all bids. Then if this item returns as it's currently as it was originally submitted, then once again we will find ourselves in a position where there is no protest concept for a rejection of all bids. So would we, I'm unclear as to why we would be inviting them to come back for that. As I understand it, if we reject these bids, we set it up as a RFP instead of an RFP, and a bunch of proposals come in, and the city chooses to award to someone other than Auto Barn, and then Auto Barn wants to protest, then that would be, as I understand it from Mr. Potter's description, that would be the appropriate process. But when this item comes back, I don't know why we would be making a point of encouraging them to come back to do something that our own rules don't allow for.
Yeah, so words are important, Mr. Comptroller. no one encouraged them to come back. I think what I stated was the point from law was duly noted, and we understood that as a board, and we were proceeding going further. I just asked that Mr. Curlett, based off the interest of his client, if there are opportunities in which he wanted to protest, like any other member of the public want to protest, to please state, engage with the Board of Estimates proceedings. And like today, we provided him an opportunity to speak. We will do the same thing and grant the same opportunities in the future.
I apologize for the misunderstanding.
Not a problem at all. At this point, is there any unreadiness, concerns regarding this? As we receive word, again, that was already duly appreciated from the law department. That's why we have the law department and our lawyers on. This item, we will move on past it. Hearing and seeing no problems or objections to that, we're moving on to the Department of Finance. Thank you, Mr. Curlett. You can leave if you like.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. And to your client, Mr. Showalter. Thank you for showing up. Moving on to the Department of Finance, Project Manager. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 33, Personal Matter, Department of Finance, item 10. This item creates a new project manager position with the department. I had the ability of speaking with Mr. Raymond late yesterday. I pulled this particular item off just because it was a new position that was created. I'm okay with what was communicated and where we are. Are there any objections or problems or concerns from the board at this point for Director Raymond? Hearing and seeing none at this point, I will take a motion. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Mr. President, I move approval. Matt Garbark.
Second.
Since it's been moved and properly second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. Next up, and I know Comptroller Henry, at the beginning, you communicated that one of the items' name should be changed slightly. So if you could please stop me when we get to that item, I would appreciate it. The next item up is Safe Streets. This is again on the non-routine agenda. It can be found on pages 45 through 50, and it deals with agreements of the operation of Safe Streets initiative throughout the city. This item was pulled off by Comptroller Bill Henry. Here to speak on the items is Tamika Garvin, the Deputy Director of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, as well as Deputy Director at this point. Ms. Garvin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Mosby. Actually, I just want to point out that Director Jackson was asked to join the meeting, so I will pass the baton to Director Jackson.
Okay, Ms. Gavin, I see you now, Ms. Jackson. Director Jackson, we're excited about your leadership and coming onto the city, and we look forward to it. So, Director Jackson, if you would like to speak on behalf of these items.
Good morning, President Mosby, Comptroller Henry, Mayor Scott, and members of the board. Thanks for having us today. With regard to the agenda items that we're discussing today, they directly relate to fiscal year 19 contracts that needed to be modified and now are in need of approval by this body. The reason for the delay associated with these contracts directly correlates to poor communication within the agency during the last administration, a significant amount of staff turnover, a lack of sufficient records, and the VIP extension itself. Happy to share a timeline of events if that makes sense, but really want to point out that the big financial impact here is directly to community-based organizations who were not paid during this time. Gotcha. What I am doing right now to address the issue is we have process mapped the contracts process to understand the needed improvements that have to take place not only within our agency, but also at an intra-agency level, building service level agreements, both internally and with other agencies, specifically audits, comptroller, BBMR. And I am working to fully staff the finance function of the agency to hire sufficient amount of staff to cover the contracting process moving forward. I'm happy to entertain any questions that board members may have.
Thank you for that background, Director Jackson. I believe the comptroller was concerned about paying the bills of 2019 this year. I think your explanation is sufficient. We know that you haven't even been here, I don't know, 19 weeks. So we appreciate your leadership and look forward to continuing to work with you. I'm a supporter of Safe Streets initiative in the program. I understand the importance of the hard work that is done there. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns for Ms. Jackson? Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just very quickly, Director Jackson, how long did the individual Safe Streets service providers have to go without being paid?
So I would say that my assessment has been in coming into this role that we have some folks who have not been paid in anywhere between 8 and 12 months. I have been expediting contracts through the process, following all protocols as necessary, and I'm happy to report that you all are rounding out our last grouping between fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 21, with the exception of 3 VIP supplemental contracts that we have just drafted today, and that we will be preparing fiscal year 22s well in advance and be submitting them in the coming weeks.
That's great. Once we approve these amendments today, what is your office able to do to make sure that the organizations are being paid as promptly and expeditiously as possible?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Comptroller Henry. With regard to your approval today, it takes typically a week for the contracts to be released to our agency. So if an expedition of the release of contracts could happen, we obviously could pay folks sooner rather than later. We have taken receipt of invoices from those community-based organizations. And so as soon as we're able to get the contracts released, we'll be able to begin processing the invoices. We have also created very transparently a spreadsheet that has been shared with all of the community-based organizations to let them know where we are in the contracting process. And so they, in fact, know that we are sitting here with you all in this process right now, waiting for the outcome of this body.
Okay. You talked a little bit about the process mapping that you're doing for the grants process. Can you talk about any other specific improvements that your office is making to the grant management and contract management process to ensure that these agreements are renewed in a timely fashion?
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, so one of the reasons why we process mapped the current process and shared that out with community-based organizations just last Friday was to demonstrate for them what current state looked like, and to make sure that as we go through these VIP supplementals, these last 3, that we're tracking how long service level agreements are taking, removing wasteful steps where necessary, with the exception of any regulatory steps, which may feel wasteful to us but necessary, to make sure that we're streamlining the process. And I don't want to understate the importance of making sure that the finance function in this agency is fully staffed. At this point, I have no one in finance. And so we are all pitching in as team members to make sure that the processing is happening. There was an exodus of financial staff during the transition period between administrations. And so actively interviewing for those positions to be filled.
Good. Okay. Mr. President, that was all the questions I had. And for the record, they go to the Director Jackson's presentation and her answers to my questions go for all of the amendments and agreements from this office. So if you wanted to entertain a motion to approve them all at once, I don't have any further questions for the other agreements.
At this point, are there any other members of the board who would like to ask any questions to Director Jackson regarding these items? Okay, based off of Comptroller Bill Henry's request, at this point, hearing no unreadiness or concern, we will group all 6 items together, and I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we combine all 6 items on page 45 through 50 regarding safe streets. At this point, I'll entertain a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you so much, Director Jackson, as well as Ms. Gavin, for joining us this morning. Again, we're moving on to the next item. Again, Comptroller Henry, please stop me when it comes to the time.
Then I'll stop you here.
Okay, so I see. All right.
Well, yeah, we're about to go to page 61 on the non-routine agenda.
Correct.
And the change, just to be clear, was on page 60. So the item that we were changing the information on was technically part of the routine agenda.
Got it.
We will have already covered it.
Okay, perfect. All right. I know that you keep us honest here, Mr. Comptroller, so that's why I wanted to keep pinging back at you. So moving on to the next item. The next item, non-routine agenda, can be found on pages 61, Department of Transportation, Amendment number 2 to agreement. Do we have anyone present from Department of Transportation to speak to this item?
Hello.
Hey, Director Sharkey.
Hey, everybody. How are you today?
We're doing good.
Great. I also believe Tish Griffin is on the line as well. So this is a amendment to a on-call consulting services or engineering and consulting services contract. Comptroller Henry earlier had questions about the meeting of the WBE goals. So as of the time of, I guess, review by MBU office, it was 1% of the WBU goals paid for. However, as of last year, there's been more more tasks let onto the contract with heavy WBU participation, which we had estimated to now be at about 9%. So as those tasks get completed, we believe they will catch up on their WBU goals.
Thank you, Mr. Sharkey. I guess, Mr. Comptroller Henry, do you have any questions or concerns at this point for Director Sharkey?
No, we had as the director referred to, we had an extensive and substantial briefing earlier this week, and what that briefing helped me do is help me identify that we have to find some way of better representing the actual current state of affairs when we report some of the MBU compliance. Because right now, the way that it's being reported in the board memos and then subsequently on the agenda is, for all practical purposes, it's a snapshot of where we were at some point in the past. And if you dig into it, you find out that more work might have taken place since those compliance numbers were effectively assessed. And so, as we discussed then, we're going to see if we can find some way to make it clearer to the public as well as to members of the board when you see numbers like on the board agenda here, where it says that they've only met 1% of their WBE goal at this time on a 10% goal. The figures that DOT was able to give us in the briefing showed a much higher compliance percentage. As far as I can tell, it's not out of any failure of MBU to properly provide information. It's more just the way the system is set up. MBU is being given numbers that aren't necessarily as current as they could be, and we have to figure out how we're going to straighten that and bring that more into a real-time type of situation, Mr. President.
Well, thank you, Mr. Comptroller, for staying vigilant and addressing and at least providing real clarity to the citizens regarding issues like this. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from other members of the board? Hearing and seeing none virtually, I'll at this point entertain a motion to proceed.
So moved.
I second.
So we have a motion has been properly seconded to approve this item. All those in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. We move on to DPW extra work orders, the Upton water mains. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 67 through 68 of the agenda. Item 7, EWO number 1, WC 1339, Upton neighborhood and vicinity water main rehabilitation, as well as item 8, EWO number 2 for the same project. Without objection, I would like to consider these items together. Hearing and seeing no objection, we will proceed with these items as combined as one. I asked to put these items on our routine agenda to get better clarity associated with the action taken here. Item 7, there is a change required regarding the particular size of piping. I think it was almost a double increase of the size. I think there's an explanation from DPW regarding this, as well as when you look at this job, I believe the MWBE goals were completely waived on this job as well. So first, we're going to turn the floor over to DPW, Mr. Kibita, to explain, I guess, the work that is undertaken and the importance of this particular change order. So, Ms. Kibita, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you, Council President Mosby. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, Mr. Shea, and Mr. Garbark. Joseph Cabeda for DPW here to request the additional funds and the extra work order for the subject project WC 1339, Upton neighborhood and vicinity water main rehabilitation. So a couple of background facts. WC 1339 is part of DPW's overall 15 miles per year goal for water main replacements. It's one of those projects. It is currently close to 100% complete, and that all the water mains that are part of the scope have already been replaced and or rehabbed. We're currently doing tie-ins and doing restoration. I also have, for additional details, the project manager, the DPW project manager, Hernan Guadalupe, if needed on the call. Extra work order number 1 was initially initiated back in July due to an overrun on a particular bid item number 812, which is the for 10-inch ductile iron pipe and fittings. That line item was exceeded primarily due to during design having incomplete or non-comprehensive information on buried infrastructure, what the scope entailed. So when that particular line item exceeded the quantity, as you see, it doubled, we submitted the extra work order to gain approval for renegotiation of the unit price. The contractors, Spinello contractors, indicated to us, they provided verification or evidence that their unit prices had gone up due to COVID. So this was submitted for unit price only, and we anticipated at that time that our contract contingency would accommodate the additional costs due to this particular overrun. As the project execution continued, there were overruns in 3 other bid items, which you will see in extra work order number 2, particularly milling and resurfacing, contingent cement, concrete pavement, and then, 4-inch ductile iron piping. So we submitted extra work order number 2 to take into account these additional overruns, which total $1,528,820. So moving forward, what we are doing to hopefully prevent some of these situations on these types of projects. We are working with DOT to provide survey services during design. And in FY22, we are going to be advertising for a geotechnical services contract that would then allow for a more detailed, comprehensive above ground and below ground assessment of the project area. So that is the background on that the extra work orders. And as you can see, item number 9, the fiscal has allotted a little bit north of 1.6 million to be transferred to accommodate this extra work order.
Thank you for that background, Mr. Kibita. What did the unit price from this particular vendor change as it relates to the original bid?
I'll ask Mr. Guadalupe if you could provide the numbers.
Good morning, everyone. Hernan Guadalupe. The original price, unit price for the bid item 812 was 500, and it increased to 518.
So from 500 to 518. Now, this was a job that was awarded not that long ago, like, is it 2019 or something like that?
I would say 2018, 2019.
Yeah. So typically, Mr. Kibita, when there are change orders and someone does change their unit pricing, do we normally, I guess, allow them to put their new unit pricing in the change order as opposed to going with the existing unit pricing that won the bid?
So per the Green Book, the city standard, any exceedance beyond 25% up or down paves the way for a discussion with the parties on changing the unit prices.
So the unit pricing would have to go from, say, this unit pricing would have to go from, say, like 500 to 750, that being 25% more. No, 250, 125, 625. So from 500 to 625, that being 25% more for us to have a negotiation. Anything under the 25, it's industry standard that we would just automatically go with the new unit pricing.
To be clear, we're talking about quantities as opposed to the unit price. So exceeding or underrunning the quantities that had been set up.
Okay.
Right.
So inside of that 1.8 million, it's like 1.7, 1.8 million. It's not just the procurement pricing of the pipe, but it's also, I guess, the installation of that pipe is embedded in that fee as well, right?
That is correct.
Okay, sorry. I thought we were saying unit pricing associated with from a labor hours perspective.
No, unit price for the particular bid item.
Got you. So they can only get it for what they can then buy it for, and kind of is what it is the point, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I guess the other bigger thing regarding this is, how does someone underestimate the amount of materials needed by 100%?
During the design phase for this particular project, we relied on GIS data that we have. And in some cases, that data can be incomplete. And so that appears to be what happened in this case, is that we had accounted for what GIS or what the desktop study relayed to us as far as the quantities of pipe that had to be replaced and rehabbed.
Mr. Kibita, is it because we're like hyper focused on the issues that come before the board regarding change orders that we're seeing the same kind of pattern or routine? But is it that because we're just not seeing the ones that folks are able to utilize that same information, they bid out the jobs, they complete the jobs, and they're completing the jobs like on schedule, on time, and at cost, and they don't have these like large change orders? I mean, this change order is like $1.7 million out of a $7-point-something million job, so it's a large change order. Is it that we're not seeing those jobs, or is this more the norm that we have these types of change jobs on these DPW contracts?
I would hesitate to say this is the norm. I mean, there are plenty of projects.
I get to talk to you every week, Mr. Kibita. That's why I'm asking.
No, I would say that this is not the norm. I
Okay.
mean, the unforeseen conditions are kind of par for the course when it comes to these type, infrastructure construction in general. But I believe that, like I mentioned earlier, some of the controls that we're putting in place, or some of the new measures we're putting in place, will kind of throttle down the impact, the financial impact from these unforeseen conditions.
Thank you. Well, we look to continue to work with you. Thank you for always coming on and being very informative with the information, not just to this board, but more importantly to the public. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board to DPW? Hearing and seeing none, at this point, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
Mr. President, I move that items on pages 67 to 68 be approved as recommended by the department.
Second.
Thank you, Director. It's been properly moved and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The next item on the non-routine agenda today can be found on page 75, Department of Public Works membership dues. At this time, I had the opportunity to kind of review the information associated with these dues. U.S. Water Alliance is a national advocacy group that promotes the agenda of water and wastewater utilities through its efforts in working with elected officials and policymakers around the country. It's important that Director Garbark and DPW stay active in this group as it relates to industry standards and best practices. At this point, I do not have any additional questions for you, Mr. Garbark. Thanks for providing that information. Are there any questions or concerns from other members of the board at this point? I see your hand up, Mr. City Solicitor.
Yeah, I'm in favor of what you just said, but that's not what I have on page 75. Maybe I've got the wrong agenda. Perhaps
or maybe so this is this should be Department of Public Works membership dues.
Yeah.
Is anyone else having the same issue? I'll go pull it.
No, that's what I have.
Okay, I must be working off a draft then.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah.
You described it well. I'm in favor of it. It's good.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. At this point, are there any other questions or concerns for Mr. Garbark? Hearing and seeing none at this point, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
Well, even though I didn't see it in writing, I still move it.
Well, you saw it in writing. You just didn't know it's coming up now. Okay, well, it's been properly moved. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. Moving on to the Health Department agreements. Sorry, having slight technical issues. Yeah. All right. Moving on to the Health Department issues, the items on pages 89 through 91. Again, we've moved these similar items in the past to the non-routine because of the MWBE, WBE goals being waived. We know that when we see these things, they are either federal or state pass-throughs. So these are just organizations that have gotten grants. The city's kind of acting in a fiduciary partner of accepting the funds and then moving them on to those organizations that were successful in getting those awards. At this point, I do not have any additional information. We will continue to bring these off of the routine to non-routine until we're able to develop more of a better structuring and formatting on the agenda so the general public can understand and know exactly what we're doing when we're waiving these types of goals, because there is no goal to kind of get, this is an organization that worked directly again with the federal government or state to secure and win that grant. If there aren't any questions or concerns for Chief Miller or Ms. Thompson at this point, I'll entertain a motion to proceed and approve this item.
I move approval of items on pages 89 to 91 as recommended by the Health Department.
Thank you for that technical approval, Director Garbark, and providing us the details. I hear a motion. Is there any second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. Last but not least, on today's non-routine agenda, it can be found on pages 103 through 109, the Department of Housing Community Development ratification of agreements. From DHCD, we have Stephen James, Carol Amanzi, Hannah Rose Kondrola Ku. I might have said that wrong, so please correct me, to speak on this item. So any member from DHCD, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, President Mosby, Mayor Scott, Comptroller Henry, Mr. Shea, Mr. Garbark. I'm Steve James, the Deputy Commissioner at HCD. Happy to speak about the delay in these contracts.
The floor is yours.
Okay. So we have a number of quite late contracts coming through today, and I'd like to speak a little bit about why they're late and what we've done about them. The often challenged contract process for block grant got a lot worse when the pandemic hit, in part because it moved staff off-site and normal communication processes became more difficult. But we also pivoted to some special COVID CDBG where we had to do applications to HUD, set up a number of programs, temporary rent supports, a bunch of legal services, contracts, some case management contracts, and several MOUs with other city agencies to move this other block grant. So it further diverted the small contract staff, and it resulted in these quite late contracts. In terms of the process and the lateness of the contracts, there are two major sources. One is the contract office itself, and that there's a bottleneck in finalizing contracts. And the major part of the problem also is the organizations. These are nonprofit subrecipient contracts, and getting the organizations to follow up with documentation requirements and to show up at negotiation agreements, which is difficult in festive times, became very difficult during the pandemic. So cumulatively, we ended up with some very late contracts that much more than we'd ever experienced before. Hence why we're here now. In terms of addressing the problem, and some of this was a one-off because of the pandemic, but there were just some systemic issues that we're dealing with. We've initiated some new software last month that will govern a lot of the management process of the block grant program, specifically a bunch of the contract processes and the way we request proposals, contracts get received, payments get processed for contracts. This will put both data management and communications through one filter rather than a series of contract officers with individual emails going to the various subrecipients. That should help a lot, and we'll see that in city fiscal year 2022 as it comes to fruition. We've also started to experiment with doing contracts for a 2-year period. The thing there is we'll just reduce the total amount of contracts coming through the system, so we don't have as much of a bottleneck in finalizing the contracts on the contract section side. So we're doing the first 5. We're trying this with some legal services contracts to see how those will work. We've been down a staff person since the June of last year, and we're finally going to fill it and do interviews this month, which should also help. So that, in sort of a nutshell, is sort of the reason for the delay and the steps we're taking to address the delay. I'd be happy to entertain questions about the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Jeans. At this point, any additional questions or concerns from members of the board for the Department of Housing and Community Development? Hearing and seeing none, at this point, I entertain a motion to proceed approval for this item.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
I think it's, I haven't heard a second. I don't believe.
Mr. Garbart seconded.
I see your lips moving. I didn't hear a sound, Director Garbart. I guess you second, right?
I second.
Perfect. All right, so it's been properly moved and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. As there is no additional business before the board, we will recess until bid opening at 12 noon. The Board of Estimates will reconvene on March the 10th, 2021. That's an important day to me. It's my birthday. I thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, please continue to stay safe. Wear your masks. Continue practicing social distancing. Wash your hands. If you had an opportunity to get a vaccination, please get a vaccination and just listen to our healthcare professionals. Thank you, Baltimore. Love you.
Good afternoon. The Board of Estimates is now in session for the receiving and opening of bids. As part of the overall effort to limit transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the Board of Estimates is conducting bid openings virtually. Members of the public can call in to listen to bid openings live by calling 443-984-1696 and entering access code 0842939. Board of Estimates meetings are broadcast live on Charm TV, Channel 25 on Comcast Cable in Baltimore City. Meetings are also streamed on the internet at https://www.charmtvbaltimore.com/live-stream. The Board of Estimates will continue to conduct bid openings virtually while the state of emergency declared by the Mayor of Baltimore and the Governor of Maryland remains in effect. I have the following addendum to note. Bureau of Procurement bid number B50006181, Mattel Voice over IP software maintenance and hardware support. Please change the bid due date from March 3rd, 2021 to March 10th, 2021. Thank you. We'll be starting with bid number one.
I should note the addendum, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Glenn.
Okay, the addendum has been noted. Bids to be received. Number one, from procurement B50006008, professional pool maintenance repair and replacement parks contract. Number two, from procurement B50006139, contractual services for armed security officers. Bid number three, procurement B50006163, residential moving and relocation services. Number four, procurement B50006180, bituminous paving materials, hot and cold patch. And bid number five, procurement B50006186, scrap metal and white goods disposal. There are no bid bonds for any of these bids. All right, starting with the first bid. Send that to you. I guess. I guess this is the duplicate. Or there's something that pulls out. No, there's. I can't tell if that's the second bid or if that's the duplicate of this one. This is for USA Pools of Delmarva.
What page are you on?
30. So the first response is from USA Pools of Delmarva, USA Management, with a bid amount of second from the last page.
I think this is an itemized bid, so we won't read the prices.
Oh, okay. You're not even the grand total?
I don't, Glenn? We don't, for itemized bids, we don't read the grand total, do we?
If it's itemized, it's too many totals for you to list. But if they have some grand total of everything overall, then they would read that.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
All right.
So there's a grand total bid of $1,198,470. I think these are. Oh, these are all copies of the Delmarva. All right. The next bid is from Patriot Pool Service LLC with a grand total bid of $733,860. Oh, sorry. Okay. And the last bid is from Millennium Pool and Spas with a grand total bid of $504,000. All right, for the second bid.
So wait a minute, I move to
Oh,
submit
sorry.
these for tabulation and report to procurement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. All opposed nay. Motion carries. All right, here's the second one.
I'll trade you. If you want to hang it up first. Thanks.
All right. The first bid is from Metropolitan Protective Services Incorporated. The amount of $173,880.
Yes.
The second bid is from Divine Professional Consulting Group in the amount of $254,250.
Yes.
Is that Silver Spring, Maryland company?
Yes.
So I have DPCG.
I'm sorry, say again?
The on the list here, it's DPCG, and I just wanted to make sure it was the same.
Oh, yeah, that's their initials.
Yeah, Divine Professional Consulting Group.
PO Box 2161, Silver Spring?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. The next bid is from Davis and Davis Enterprise Incorporated, doing business as All Secure Security Company, in the amount of $301,500. The next one is from Trust Consulting Services Incorporated, in the amount of $311,500. I seem to only have one copy of this one.
Yeah, United Securities, it says here, original only.
Okay. Well, then I will read United Security Forces LLC in the amount of $157,500. Next. Next bid is from Tactical One Security Services in the amount of $224,000.
Yes.
And then the final bid is from Blue Force Security Services Company in the amount of $354,500.
So I move we submit this to procurement for tabulation and report.
Is moved, is there a
I
second?
second.
Moved and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the third bid. This bid is from MCNA LLC in the amount of $2,050,125.
Yep.
I think this is the copy. The second bid is from Allen and Son Moving and Storage in the amount of $1,893,750.
And I move that we submit to procurement these for tabulation and report.
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the fourth item. The first bid is from M. Luis Products LLC. I have a total bid amount on page 30.
Okay, yes.
Total bid price is $2,773,500.
Yes.
Check to make sure it's not an item bid. We didn't have an item 2 on the other page.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. There's item 1, that's an item number 1. Oh, thank you.
Total page, okay, yeah.
And it's quite a difference. Thank you. That's a good catch. Okay. The total bid price, item number 2, including A, B, and C, is $56,206,000. What is 30? Wow. $50 million worth of sealant. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Commodities.
We will follow your career with great interest. All right, second bid is from P. Flanagan and Sons Incorporated. And okay. So the total bid price for item number 2, A plus B plus C, is $2,595,300.
You gotta give me that again.
Beg pardon?
Can you say that again?
I have $2,595,300.
And that is all 3.
That is all 3.
All right, I move that we submit these to procurement for tabulation and report.
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And the final one? Oh, actually, I guess you and you get that. Oh, it's just one bid. All right. The first and only bid is from The Good Companies Incorporated. What page should we be looking on? 7?
Okay. So these are percentages of what they'll pay based on the sales of the products, I guess, back to the city.
I'm sorry, what page?
Page 7.
My page. Oh. There's a second page 7. That's lovely. Okay. Okay, bid price sheet. So I just read each one of those items?
Go
No, go ahead.
I was saying either you can itemize it, don't read anything, or you can read all 3.
I'll read all 3. I'll just go through it quickly. Item number 1, scrap metal ferrous. Contractor shall pay 10%. Item number 2, scrap metal non-ferrous. The contractor shall pay to the city 15%. And item number 4, white goods.
4?
It does go 1, 2, 4.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got it.
Without refrigerants, the contractor shall pay to the city 5%. I'm sorry, I guess I should read it. The total percentage is the contractor shall pay to the city X percentage of the weekly American Metal Market Index per net ton of scrap metal. And for the scrap metal, it's 10%. For scrap metal non-ferrous, it's 15%. And item number 4, The contractor shall pay to the city 5% of the weekly American metal market per net ton of with goods without refrigerants.
So
I can't believe that that's an actual sentence, grammatically speaking, but I'm sorry, Mr. Solicitor.
That's all right. I move that we submit these to procurement for tabulation and report.
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Is that it? Okay. Seeing that there is no other business before us, the board stands in recess until Wednesday, March 10th at 9 a.m. Thank you very much and stay safe.